Um, yeah, so my teacher, who some of you are familiar with, was great Zen master Chengsi Kim, and we called him Sabanim, which meant founding master. And yeah, father, teacher, founding master, founder. Um, I lived with him for 16 years, from 2005 to 2021, and until he passed away. And this past Sunday, was the second anniversary of his death. And just a year before that, um, one of my best friends, Kedar, had passed away suddenly from a heart attack. And um, just last year, I had a near-death experience with a stroke. And it's all kind of come in this February, March time. This is the first year I haven't had any major losses. So anyway, I just thought, with all of that in mind, today might be a good day to talk about life and death, and just my thoughts on some of that, some of the things I've learned from all those different experiences. And we'll get to that a little bit more after the meditation. But one of the things I wanted you to consider, or perhaps think about before we go into the meditation, to kind of give you some seeds for your mind, is where did you come from? Where was your mind before you were born? Did you just appear out of nowhere, or did you come from somewhere else? What is your sense of that? Do you have a feeling about that? Do you ever think about that? Um, and then, what happens after you die? Where does your mind go? You can imagine what happens to your body. All of the molecules and atoms dissipate into the world and the universe, and that's all of the material parts of your body. But your mind isn't material, and what happens to that? You know, where does that go? And also, what is the purpose of life? Why do we do this? Why are we here? And those are just some of the things I'd like you to put in your mind before we start meditating. And before we get started, let's just take a few deep breaths together. We'll just try and slow down our breathing a little bit, take some deeper breaths, kind of use the breath to bring the energy from your head and your brain down into your heart. And this is, like I said last time around, this is a technique you can use to reset your body and align your heart and mind. So once again, just when we meditate, we're going to use a mantra. The mantra I suggest using is Kwansam Bosal. That's the Bodhisattva of love and compassion. So you want to repeat the mantra over and over and use it to push out all the other thoughts from your mind. The idea is, we're trying to clear our mind of all the thoughts, but if you don't think of anything, something always comes, and something will inevitably come, while you're meditating. So just try and use that mantra and repeat it and push it. Try to use that to push the other thoughts out of your mind. So we'll just be saying Kwansam Bosal, Kwansam Bosal, Kwansam Bosal. And that is the Bodhisattva of love and compassion. And she is said to have 10,000 hands, 10,000 eyes, and 10,000 hands. So she can see what you need and give you what you need. So it's supposed to bring good energy to you while you're meditating. So with that said, let's bow and turn around, just face the wall while we meditate, and we'll do that for about 15 or 20 minutes. Can all stand up, stretch out for a minute. Oh, that music was particularly annoying tonight.
Just maybe meditate faster, that's all.
That's true. Is that possible?
Yeah. I flew through my forms.
Oh, you will form training.
In addition to what's up. Yeah.
Sit down again. So, any thoughts? Any on the, yeah? Do you see? Do you see where your mind was before you were born? Yeah, I was going to talk a little bit about Sabanim when he passed away. I was really sad. I'd lived with him for 16 years, and he was like as dependable as the sun. You know, he was there every single day. Someone I could depend on. He was always shining a light, his light, on the path for us all to follow. And his Dharma name was even Wang Wang, which means universal light. And when he passed away, I just felt like one of the brightest lights in the universe had dimmed. And I was sitting in my room a little bit after he passed away, and I was trying to write a poem, about a memorial poem for his memorial service. And I was kind of struggling to overcome my emotions and come up with the right words. And it was in the morning. I used to live in the bell tower of the temple, and it had this bright, this kind of like arch lightway above the doorways. And I was sitting there, and then as I was at my desk writing, and then the sun at that moment lined up with the window, and it came through the window and blinded me. Like, it was very bright, and all I could just feel the light engulfing me, and all I could feel was this warmth on every inch of my skin, all over. And I could feel like Sabanim's presence was in the light. And I feel like I got a very clear communication from him at that point. And there were no words, but the message I got was, don't worry, stay on the path, and keep going. And that's something he would always say, so it was just something, the kind of thing he would say to me almost every day, especially if I was reaching a point of frustration or something like that. And at that point, that's when I had the realization that he was like a sun in my universe, and that his path would be much the same as like a sun or a star. And so I planted a seed in my own mind that I should follow the cycle of a star in my meditation, and just follow the life cycle of a star. And so I planted that seed, and then I went into like a very deep meditation, and I could see the life of a star and what happens after it's gone. And after that, I was actually no longer distressed about the situation, and the words to the poem came to me. And I said this was a place where I wanted to share art, and so I was going to share the poem that I wrote from that whole experience. I know Jason's already heard it, but so and I've written a book of a bunch of poems and lessons about Zen, and I'm pretty close to getting it published at this point. I have to do paintings for it, but this is a part of it. And anyway, that's just some context. Shimgum Do, founding master, great Zen master, Wangwang Changsi Kim. Sabunim jumps into the sky with the rising sun, swinging around his mirrored blade, slashing through the wind, spinning in the air like a sparkling gem with 10,000 eyes, reaching out with warm rays of starlight in 10,000 directions. While the light illuminates the mind-sword way, he plants the seed of enlightenment in the heart of our galaxy, guiding us to stay on a circular path like the planets stay in orbit, to create a cycle of clear action, clear thinking, and a clear mind. We learn from him that practice, like water, is needed every day. It crystallizes the forms within our mind as we grow into a diamond, sprouting to life through our movements, blooming into a mirrored flower, reflecting a blossoming supernova before becoming an infinite blade of light that pierces a hole through the darkness of eternity, leaving only the hands of gravity holding the emptiness. As the blinding light swirls like tears around the eyes of the universe, each pupil remains holding the unseen sword of the mind, casting the shadow of an onyx seed, taking root far beyond sight. So that was the words I came up with. And yeah, it gave me kind of comfort knowing that, like, even though the light was gone, that all of the gravity and the forces he put into the universe were still keeping us all on our path. And everything was still in the same orbit. It was just we couldn't see him anymore, so yeah, much like a black hole. So that's kind of how that ties all together. And yeah, anyway, a year before that is when one of my best friends, Kadar, passed away, and he died suddenly at work from a heart attack, and I didn't expect that. You know, he was an extremely talented music producer, and he had I had always been inspired by him as an artist, and he had read the early drafts of my book, and he was like really liked it and encouraged me to keep going. And we were actually collaborating on making. He was making musical accompaniment to go with all of my poetry. So we were going to have like the album and a book released simultaneously. And I always just assumed that was going to. It was like inevitable that was going to happen. And he made one track and a couple other ideas, and that was it. And yeah, it was very shocking to me, and it was the first person like really close to me who had passed away, and I had been really close to him at the time, so it was just another hole in my life. And I was very sad about the situation, and Sabanim told me to put a candle on the altar, and we burn a candle, and it burns for a week. And when we all bow and chant, it sends good energy his way. And then underneath the candle, I put a message with his name and wishing him to attain heaven. And for like the next week, I just felt um, like I could feel his presence, and it felt like he was lost or confused. And it's hard to explain, but it was just like a feeling. I just felt like he was around and things weren't settled. And about a week after he had passed away, I was going into my room, and every time we leave the Dharma room, which the door went from my room into the Dharma room, we bowed to the altar. And so that day I was bowing to the altar towards Buddha, and I looked and I saw his candle. And at that moment, I felt like him and I were looking at the same thing. And I could see where he had been. And since he passed away, his mind had traveled all the way to the end of the universe and back. And then his mind was wandering around all the places he was familiar with, kind of confused. And eventually he ended up coming to me. And when I bowed and looked at the altar, he looked at the altar and he saw his name on the candle. And that's when he realized what had happened. And at that moment, he realized that he was free and he didn't have to stick around. And he let go of all of his attachments and went on to become one with the eternal heavens, if you will, and after that, I didn't feel sad anymore. I just felt really at peace about the whole situation. It was like flicking a switch. Like I didn't, and I read a different poem at his memorial, and it was kind of weird because I had written the poem a year before he died, and he never knew who it was for. And then when he passed away, I knew the poem was for him, and it was strange because like I didn't really know anyone who passed away, but I wrote a memorial poem, and it was like bringing me to tears when I wrote it, and I didn't know why because I was like, I don't know where these emotions are coming from, but yeah, I don't know. I feel like I was really glad I had it at the time because I don't think I would have been able to write it, in that phase, and it really gave me comfort, and I think it gave his family a lot of comfort when I read it at the memorial. Yeah, so, and then
Do you have that with you?
I don't have that one. No. Um, that one, yeah, I haven't read that in a long time, actually. Um, but maybe I'll make it available to you somehow, so you can see it. Um, and then a year ago, I had a stroke, and it was really serious. And I lost my ability to walk. I lost my coordination. I lost all feeling in my left side. Um, I'm basically fine now, thankfully. But at the time, um, the doctors had no idea why it had happened, and I was shocked that it happened to me because I had always been in really good shape and healthy. Everyone I knew was shocked. Like they always thought like I would be the last one to have any kind of problems like that. And my friends and family were like really worried about me. And I at that point I didn't know what was going to happen. I actually had multiple strokes, so like weeks apart, and so I didn't know if they were going to stop or if it's going to keep happening. And this is at the point where I was just like in the hospital for a few days, unable to walk. And I told everyone I told a few people close to me, not everyone I know, but like my parents and my housemate. I said if I die, don't worry about me. I said spiritually, I'm all set. And I think that really like disturbed them a little bit, but I 100% believe this because at one point in my deepest meditation, I had released my mind from my body, and I understood that that's the same thing that happens when you die. Your mind is released from your body. You no longer have your body. It goes somewhere else. And for me, that was heaven. I had already seen where it goes, and I knew I didn't have anything to fear. But I was also pretty certain I wasn't gonna die. I just had a feeling about that as well. So I just felt like I had work left to do here, and I felt like my purpose here is to help other people find a path to heaven within themselves, and kind of teach them the things that help me to find that within myself. And for the past year, I've had to deal with a lot of pain, and I'm still dealing with some of the stuff. And but I'm also still here, so I can share all this with the people who are listening. And this is the things I'm teaching you. It's like meditating, um, and yeah, just how to find that within yourself. And so in in Buddhism, we teach about the circle of life, and that's the cycle of birth, life, and death. And science teaches us that um, you know like matter, the material things, matter can't be created or destroyed. That's like a law that they say. Matter cannot be created or destroyed, it can only be transformed. And so that all the matter that exists now is all that will ever exist. And that means it's finite. There's always going to be the same amount of elements in the universe. And the mind, on the other hand, is not material, it's actually infinite. So no matter what you put in your mind, you can put the entire universe in your mind, and it's still empty. That means it's infinitely, you can put infinite amounts of things in it. And time is relative. That's another Einsteinian concept. It's relative to where you are in the universe. uh, it's also a concept that really only exists within your mind, and you only perceive time based on where you are in the universe. We perceive it based on the way the planet spins and then rotates around the sun. When you go out into space, it's based on the speed of light, and it's actually based on space and time. So it's completely relevant. And so, since your mind is eternal, in essence, so is time. So time is infinite. And after you die, the molecules and atoms of your body, they go out into the universe. And with infinite time and a finite amount of material, eventually all of that material will come back into the same shape and just take the same form. And that is when in that's when you become reincarnated. And so when you hear Buddhists talk about reincarnation, it means your mind is reborn. And it's kind of like having a deck of cards. Like you have one deck of cards, you shuffle it and deal it out. And if you do that enough times, eventually you end up with the same hand. And even though you have the same hand, not everybody else necessarily does. So it's always a little different. But that idea of reincarnation, it might sound appealing, but you also have to realize that living, that's where all the suffering comes from. It's in order to live, you actually have to kill. Like whether it's a plant or an animal, you have to kill to feed yourself and to survive. And that creates karma. And so when you're living, and that's just one example of one of the ways you have to create karma, and by being alive. And so you're constantly creating karma, and karma is like adding, like if your mind is originally clear, when you put karma in, it's like putting color in it, and it's not clear anymore. You're tainting it. And if you put enough color in it, eventually it starts to draw a circle, and that circle is the circle of life. And when you complete the circle, that's death. And so as long as you remain attached to your karma, when you'll stay on that same path and always follow that path into the next life. So that is a continuing circle all the way around. So that's kind of how I'm symbolically explaining the circle of life and your karma. So as long as you're attached to that, you repeat the same patterns. And the idea with meditation is you're trying to free yourself from your karma and release yourself from your karma. And when you can release yourself from the karma, you become free from the constraints of yourself. And you're putting down it's a practice of learning how to release yourself from your ego, your opinion, and your desire. And those are the things that are keeping you attached to your karma. And so when you can use meditation, you can free yourself from that. And when you break that cycle and free yourself from that circle, that's what Buddha called attaining nirvana. And that is heaven. It's when you don't have to suffer anymore. And that's what meditation can help us do. It can help us let go of our karma and find heaven. And I would just suggest to you, that the purpose of life is for all of us all to find our own path to heaven. And meditation, I think, is one of the ways you can help find that within yourself. And I just say, keep meditating, and I wish you luck in this journey. And thank you. And if you have any questions or anything, I'm happy to stay and talk for a little longer. We got started a little late today, so but it is right now 8 p.m. just as so you know. Any questions or anything? Comments?
Yeah,
Confusion?
You mentioned the same form, so I just wanted to clarify that. it's not the same form in the sense that I'm coming back as Pyle, right? It's a form, but not necessarily.
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit of a symbolic metaphor, if you will, but there's some literal aspects of it. I mean, the cells that make up your body are always going to be in the atoms and molecules are always going to be in the universe, and they're always shuffling around, and over an infinite amount of time they all come back to the same formation. And that's when your mind knows, that's my home, that's where I have to come to. And but at the same time, like, you're always the cells in your body, they change over the course of your lifetime too, so you're not always the same form. It's always changing, everything's always changing, you're always changing, and the universe is always changing. So it's always a little different, but also you keep your karma as long as you're attached to it, and it's like you it's like one step leads to the next. You can pivot and you can turn and you can change, and something can get in your way, if it's in, you're like, but you can only move on from where you are, if that makes sense. And everything you do in your life becomes part of your mind, and that's always in there. It can't be taken out. And the only way that I'm familiar with is through meditation, and my own experiences. I mean, this is something Buddha taught more or less, and what my teacher taught me. And it's something it always made sense to me in a certain way, but also my own personal experiences have shown me that this is true. And that's why I have the conviction to teach it, because I think it's real, and it's something that you can, um, karma is real, and you can free yourself from it too. Um, I don't know if that answers your question or not, but uh, I kind of got off on a little bit of a tangent there. But um, any more follow up to that, or?
I don't want to take the floor, but when you say we hold on to our karma, right? So uh, someone could interpret that, or rather, if we let go of our karma, we can free ourselves. Yeah.
Yeah.
So someone with bad intentions would say, okay, well, I'll go do this bad thing, that bad thing, that bad thing. And I'm getting bad karma, but I'm not going to hold on to it. I'm not going to feel guilty. So is that the same as
No.
relief?
No. I mean, karma is karma. I mean, it's what you consider bad. I mean, I'm gonna go eat a meal after this. Something that for me is good karma, but something else is gonna die because of that. So that's whether it's a plant or an animal. Even if I'm a vegetarian, and so even though it's like good in a certain sense for my survival, it also is creating karma, and you can call it good or bad, whatever you want to call it. But I have that karma. I have to clear that out, no matter what, whether it's good or bad, good and bad. You have to clear all of that out.
You gotta do something good with that energy.
Yeah, and that's what meditation can be used for, is to clear your mind of everything. Clear, just completely clear. No thoughts, no feelings, no emotions, no attachment, no good, no bad. Um, and that anything just living, the wind blows on you, that's creating a certain amount of karma, even if you're sitting still. Um, so that's just a part of living. And I think karma is a little bit, it has different meanings, I think, in English than in the pure sense. Like it's associated with good and bad. And I think karma is just karma. It's good for some, from depending on who you are, it could be good or bad. Kind of what I said about like eating. Like I'm going to create karma from that, and I have to clear that out. And uh, I think if you're, to just kind of clarify, like not to, if you're doing a lot of bad things, you're gonna create a lot of karma, and it's gonna stay attached to you, and it's gonna be really hard to shake that off if you're doing a lot of bad. And most bad, I would say, comes from service to your ego and yourself. Like if I eat a meal and take just what I need, that's a certain amount of karma. But if I start to take way more food than I need and all of these resources, then all of a sudden, like, Jason can't eat and you don't have enough food. And now I've created a whole different level of karma and things um, that are going to I'm going to have to rectify, right? So um, when you meditate, you can see the links to these things much more clearly because you're not thinking about just your own survival. You're trying to put down your opinions, your ego, your desire, and then see what's there when there's nothing else there. And what you find is that all these lines that we draw around ourselves, they're completely made up. Everything is connected. Everything is part of everything. And we're all connected. And so doing things to serve my ego, it really only usually harms myself. And at that point, it doesn't make sense to do what you had said, like bad things, because it actually makes way more logical and rational sense to be compassionate because you're part of everything. So helping someone else will ultimately help me. Like if I take all the resources and all the food and nobody else can eat, yeah, I can eat forever. I have way more than I need. But now all of a sudden, maybe it's like a doctor that I need to cure my disease or help me with my stroke. They don't have food. They don't have the resources they need to help me out when I need it. The chain of karma can go. I'm just giving like little examples, but like the chain of karma goes way further than you can see or rationally or logically deduce. It can take a long time to catch up, and it can take many lifetimes to make up for what you've done, and that's like a lot of suffering ultimately. And that's kind of what I'm trying to help people, is to, like, yeah, you have to survive, you have to live, you have to participate in our reality, but also you have to figure out the right balance. And taking, you'll hear things in, like, like Buddhism, but also a lot of religions, they teach, um only take what you need. Like, that's a rule at the temple I grew up, and you're not supposed to serve yourself more food than you even need. You're not supposed to use more water than you need. um and I think, and every religion I'm familiar with at its core teaches compassion, that you're supposed to help other people. And um, I think they're all kind of trying to point you, and most of them are literally trying to point you to heaven. So you do these things, you get to heaven. And I'm not telling you, I'm trying to tell you that basically the same things. It's like, and I think what I'm also trying to say is meditation is a key part of that, because it's not above the clouds. It's, if you're looking out there for it, it's not there. You have to turn your eyes and your mind inward, and that's where heaven is, and that's where you will see the path. And it affects how you live your life, but if you're looking out there for the signs, you're not going to, it's going to be really hard to see them, because you're always going to be tainted by your karma and your need to survive, and the things that uh, your impulses that kind of are from your body that override your mind sometimes. And when you meditate, you're making your mind stronger so it can override your body and say, oh, I've had enough, I don't need that, and I should not be mean to this person. I should help them, because maybe in the future I'm going to need help. Maybe you don't have to think about it in those terms necessarily, like it's serving yourself, but it really is, it's serving yourself. Like, every one of us came from a place where we relied on someone else's compassion already. You wouldn't be here if your mom didn't feed you, or if someone didn't feed you after you were born. Like, they were teaching you compassion from the day you were born. You wouldn't have made it this far without that. The only reason you're alive is because somebody else had compassion. And I'll tell you, when you get to the end of your life, you're probably going to need someone else to be compassionate to you too. And I learned that. I wish I didn't have to learn it so vividly, but when I had my stroke, like, I was relying on other people completely for a while. And I was very fortunate that I had surrounded myself by compassionate people, and I had like people who were willing to care for me when I needed it. So if I had just been on like a very selfish, ego driven lifestyle, they might not have been there for me. And I might have, someone literally took me to the hospital when I was having a stroke. Like, they might have just been like, forget about that guy, and who knows what would happen then. So that's just one example. I don't know um, how to, like, it's hard to have rules like what's good and bad. Like I said, it's not always clear, but and we all have to make these determinations by ourselves. You have to, and you might make bad decisions if you're being driven by your ego and your instinct to survive. And what I'm telling you is meditation will help you put all of that down and find the right balance. And then when you find that and you keep going and your mind becomes clear, then you can see that path that I'm talking about, the one that leads you to where you want to be. And like, when you die, if you don't know where you're going, you could be going to the same place that I'm going, but it's just going to be scary because you don't know where it is, right? Even though I called it heaven, it could seem like complete chaos if you don't know, if you're not like preparing yourself in a way for that reality that's coming. Like, how do you exercise for that, in this lifetime? I would suggest meditation. Like, it's practicing putting down yourself, your body, your opinion, your desire, and then when you get there, you know where you are and you know where to go, and you know how to navigate that. And maybe it's where you want to be ultimately, like heaven. But if you only are seeing chaos and feeling confused about not having a body, then you're always going to be looking for that body and trying to come back and do the same things over and over again, right? So I don't know, I'm kind of speaking probably like a little too literal about this, but I think this is something I feel pretty strongly about. Like, this will actually help you navigate that metaphysical realm when you don't have a body. Like, um, that has been my experience, and like I practice this way, and I don't always have the right correct answer for every situation in life, but I can tell you I've um, in my real life, like I've been surrounded by angels, like people who and saints and people who have helped me through really tough situations. And I think if you practice what I'm telling you, you'll and you probably do it instinctively sometimes, so you don't necessarily need me to tell you this, but the more you kind of focus your energy in that direction, the more you'll find the same for yourself. And that's kind of what the what I'm trying to teach people, because I think it's something that these lessons have been kind of forgotten. So does that help at all? I appreciate your questions, because it makes me think about, sometimes you use words and I say karma and it means something to me. And if I don't clarify it, you can say, oh, I can just do whatever I want and meditate and it's going to be fine. But um, it will help, but it's not going to, I think it will help you so you don't make those kind of mistakes anymore. It's easy to say, like, oh, this person does bad and they're going to meditate and free themselves from all that. But if they meditate and they get good at it, they're not going to keep doing those same things, because they're going to realize all of these things I'm saying. Like, you're connected to everything. The line you draw around your body, the skin, it's actually like mostly space. Like, there's no real solid line. It's all of the atoms are very little bits of mass with huge amounts of space in them, and that's what you're made of. And so that emptiness is all in you, and the lines, and it connects me and you and all of us. And I'm just using scientific terms now based on what science knows, but this is the kind of stuff that before we had science and microscopes and things like that, and ways of and complicated mathematics, like, this is stuff that Buddhism has taught for a long time, and I think it's in other religions too. I think some of it's been corrupted for the same reasons, like a lot of big organizations become corrupted. It becomes kind of about self-serving and preserving power. But I think, like, the original lessons are basically all the same, you know. Um, so yeah, I don't think it's completely unique, and I think everybody, when I have these conversations with people, and I even if we come from different backgrounds, when we kind of really dig into it, I think most of the people I've encountered, I've found like a lot of common ground on these things. When I say it, it's not like I'm saying something new. It's like I'm revealing something they already knew in words that they already felt inside. So uh, and I can't. Nothing I'm gonna tell you is gonna make you go to heaven, and it comes from you doing the work. And I don't think it has to come through Buddhism or Zen. I think I think this is one technique to get there, and I think there's other approaches, but I think that's what you ultimately have to, like, prove to yourself these things. I can tell you what to do, but you have to prove it to yourself. And if it doesn't work, even what I'm telling you, I'll suggest try another path. But I'm trying to um, communicate these ideas in the best way possible and as clear as I can. And I'm happy to, engage in conversations if you think something I'm saying is not true, or, misleading, perhaps, because I think that can happen, even if I say something intending to, it could be just misinterpreted. I've seen people do that with stuff my teacher said. So, we both, me and someone else sat around and heard him say exactly the same thing, and we both interpreted it totally different, right? So, do you have something to say?
You asked about where my mind came from.
Right.
And I was thinking about that, and I thought, well, my parents, created me, but then their parents created them, and then their parents created them. And it's like you go back just a couple generations, and it's like 14 people had to come together to create Jason. And then you go back like 80 generations, and now you're looking at like 4,000 people it took to get down to where I'm at. I don't know if I have a question, but I feel like a lot of pressure to do something with that. I feel like it took 4,000 people to come together to eventually create me. I feel like they're like a reverse pyramid, like weighing down on my head, sort of, rather than being at the top of the pyramid. I feel like I'm like it took, I
Yeah.
guess I just feel a lot of pressure, like from the ancestors, etc., to do something.
Yeah, I think you do inherit a certain amount of your parents' karma. But I think that also has to do with your own karma, and you don't have your parents' mind, and they don't have their grandparents' mind, so you have your own mind.
Okay.
But when your parents, like, they built a house, right? Like your body was like the house, and it was an empty house when they built it, and your mind said, "Oh, that's for me. I'm going in there."
I see. Okay.
And so it's like a carpenter built a house, and now you live there, right? But you don't have you have the karma of like whether it was a good carpenter or a bad carpenter, but you also have responsibility for the house when you have the house. And so yeah, I don't think you have to play with the cards you're dealt, in this hand. And they're not always a good hand sometimes. And everybody has, even if you have a good hand, you can still blow it, So just, I think the pressure is thinking, and what I'm trying to teach is practice putting that down, and then you can see more clearly. Oh, like, to go back to the card analogy, like, life has dealt me this, I need to play this, and this is what's going to help me navigate that. And I think the more you do that, the more you will intuitively do that, be able to make the right moves. And that's what meditation will help with, because if you're thinking too much and thinking that, you'll start to ultimately like think about survival and ego and things like that, and then you'll start to make moves that aren't necessarily coming from your intuition. And so I think meditating helps you get in touch with your true intuition, and that intuition is like it doesn't speak words, but it's the voice of your mind, and it's telling you what to do. And the more clearly you can hear that, the more you will make the right moves. And when I say the right moves, I'm saying like towards heaven, if that's ultimately your goal. Like that's that voice, and it can be hard to know what the true voice of your intuition is, especially when you've been told by lots of people what to do and what's right and what's wrong, and like all these things from society, from your parents. Like maybe, you know, like somebody told you, you're supposed to be a doctor your whole life, but it never felt true to your own heart. I mean, that's not a bad path. I'm just saying, like, it's not for everybody, you know, and like your intuition is going to tell you your path, and it will also tell you how to navigate all of these other complicated aspects of your life. And it's not always, it doesn't always make logical, rational sense. Like, maybe, you know, you're supposed to go to the movies with your friends or something, and it's all your favorite people in the world, or you know, or something, and something happens and you can't go, you know, or and then, you know, maybe then something like the movie theater catches on fire, and your intuition will lead you, you know, in a way that it doesn't always make sense. And I'm just making a random example. Like, it doesn't always, sometimes it seems like a mistake, but it was really your intuition protecting you, right? And sometimes it's just a mistake. So like, it's complicated, but my experience has been, the more energy I put into meditating and clearing my mind and working on myself, it puts all the parts around me that I need to be uh, like successful in this journey, if you will. And it's, you know, it's a pretty indirect route. Like, even in my own experience, like I thought I had a pretty direct path to what I was supposed to do, and I had a stroke. Like, you know, I didn't see that maybe there was something I could have done differently, but I survived, and I have the cards I'm dealt with. And it honestly, it hasn't stopped me. I had all of the parts. Like, I didn't have like a lot of money or a big support system, but I had everything I needed, you know. And I honestly feel like if I had more money, I would have been in a different situation, and like not necessarily had, like, I might have been living by myself, even just by choice, you know, but instead I was living with housemates who were like good people. And when I was like dying, they literally took me to the hospital, you know. So if I had just been like, oh, I'm going to live by myself in a big mansion or something, like, not that that's not bad, but I might not have had the people I needed there, you know. I don't know. It's not always that clear. And like, I didn't see that as like, I didn't see this as the path, but it is the path. And I'm still here able to teach, you know. And even before that, my plan was to do this, but I hadn't done it, you know. And now I've had this all happen, and in less than a year I was teaching classes, you know. So just, if I don't have a rational explanation, you know, but I do think it's helping me teach in this sense. Like, I can use it as an example for people, you know. It's not always easy, even for me. And but yeah,
for keeping going.
yeah, sorry if you're staying late, if it's too late for you, but we can call it a night here, and we'll do this every month, so
Thanks so much. Appreciate it.
so we can keep the lessons flowing, and